Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network. For the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews, press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. From the Popcorn Talk Network and producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and Phil Svitek, this is iTalk Movies. Long-form interviews with leading members of the film industry. And now, your host of iTalk Movies.
Hi there, Popcorn Talk fans. I'm your host, Megan Salinas, here for iTalk Movies today with a very, very special guest. Today, joining me in the studio is Gren Wells. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic because we are about to talk about a phenomenal film that you directed, and I don't even know where to start because this is such a fantastic journey. I can't wait to talk to you about it. But before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and remind our viewers that if you haven't done so already, please take the time to subscribe to us on iTunes, subscribe to us on YouTube at The Popcorn Talk, and you can find us on Twitter at The Popcorn Talk. So please go ahead and take a moment to do that, rate, leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Now that that's done, oh my gosh, I'm a big fan of movies in particular that are about journeys, both metaphorical and literal, and this is both of those things. So tell us, for people who haven't heard of the movie yet, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So The Road Within is about a young man named Vincent who has Tourette syndrome. And at the beginning of the film, his mother, who was his primary caregiver, dies. So his estranged father is forced to step in, but he's running for political office and doesn't want his son on the campaign trail because he's embarrassed of him. So he puts him into a clinic that's run by a very unconventional doctor. And once there, he falls in love with a young anorexic woman. And together, they decide to steal the doctor's car, but end up actually having to kidnap the OCD roommate when he threatens to tell on them. And with the dad and the doctor in hot pursuit, the three kids go on this life-changing road trip to go deliver the ashes of Vincent's mother to the ocean. Now,
this is a lovely, lovely film. But what in particular made you want to tell this story? What drew you to this project?
So I've always related to outsiders, just characters who are literally on the outside looking in, because when I was 15, a horse stepped on my face.
Oh my God.
So trust me when I tell you that nobody wants to be friends with a girl who has a hoof print in her face.
Oh my gosh.
And so I don't know, it really made me realize at that point, like, I need to have a point of view. I need to have a sense of humor about things. And that's what I gravitate to. That's why, to me, Breakfast Club is a classic and always will be. Because everybody feels like an outsider at some point, whether you're the prom queen, the jock, the dork, it doesn't matter. And I think if we all unite in that, then you know, mental health issues won't also have such a big stigma against them, because that's one of my biggest mandates right now is to just get rid of that stigma, because physical pain doesn't have a stigma, so why should mental? And so all of these things kind of culminated in The Road Within.
Now, when creating these characters, where did each of these characters come from? Were they based on real life people, or did they just kind of come because you wanted to explore these issues in a way that didn't, as we were talking about earlier, didn't seem like schmaltzy Lifetime material?
Right. A little bit of both. It is based on a German film that I found. I optioned it off the trailer because I knew that if they could pack that much heart and humor into 2 minutes, that the movie had to be amazing. And luckily I was right, because it went on to win the German Oscar for Best Film and Best Actor. And luckily I had the rights at that point. So I adapted it. And one of the things that I did do to bring it over to American audiences, and something that I related to, because I was anorexic and bulimic growing up, and so that character really obviously struck true to me. And you know, just bringing some more reality to the character of Marie, and then also the OCD character, because I do have some OCD tendencies, as I've been told by all my friends. That in the original, which by the way, like I said, it's beautiful. I wanted they used him a lot for comedic relief, and I wanted to bring the other side of OCD to that, the pain and the torture, because for instance, Dev Patel and I researched and talked with a lot of young men who were also suffering from OCD, and there's this one guy named Chad Fess, and he was really the inspiration for Alex, because he was so open and honest about his pain and dealing with OCD. And he just wanted to increase awareness, because he would say sometimes like he couldn't even get out of his house because he couldn't open the door correctly. And, you know, there is no way to obviously open a door correctly, but for someone who's suffering from OCD to that level, it stops everything. So.
No, and it's really important to represent these people in a way that actually does show that pain.
Right.
So going off of that, how much research did you guys have to do because I imagine that is probably the focus of preparing for these roles, preparing the cast for the roles that they're in.
Right. I don't think that they've ever been portrayed as honestly and authentically in a movie.
Hollywood has a reputation for getting it wrong.
And also just making fun of it. And, you know, the Tourette's thing especially, where people just use it as the butt of a joke. And I would say to that, once again, what gives you the right to make fun of someone's pain? Now, there's a big difference between laughing at someone and laughing with them. And that's what the characters learn on this journey, is that it's okay to laugh at yourself, because everyone is ridiculous. It doesn't matter if you have Tourette's or you don't. You do ridiculous things throughout the day. So, you know, and I think that lesson that Marie and Alex teach Vincent is so beautiful, because after he ticks and says something ridiculous, they're laughing at him and he gets really angry. And then suddenly he realizes, he's like, okay, that's pretty funny. But yeah, tremendous amount of research. Robbie Sheehan, once I cast him, we rehearsed for 6 months prior to shooting. And that's unheard of in Hollywood, to first of all get an actor for free for that long. But he just wanted to make sure that the portrayal was 100% authentic. And he worked with this young man that the Tourette Society put me in touch with, named Jackson Kramer. And Jackson grew up with incredibly violent tics and coprolalia, which is actually where you vocalize, because most people don't know this. Tourette's is physical and guttural tics, but when they vocalize, it's called coprolalia, and only 10% of Tourette sufferers have that. So he did, and he, you know, his word was the N-word, and, you know, Jewish kid from the Valley, he got beat up a lot. So his big thing, once again, was just awareness. So he gave of his time as well. And I moved Robbie and Jackson in together. And, you know, it was so interesting because they would literally sit across from each other at the breakfast table, and Jackson would eat and he would tick, and then Robbie would imitate him. And then after probably about 2 weeks of doing this, Jackson and I finally said, okay, great. Now you've mastered how to tick. Now you have to make the ticks your own. And he had to throw out everything that he had just learned, because no two ticks are alike. It's kind of like the snowflake thing, you know? Like you cannot, because everybody is doing it for their body. So the ticks that you see in the movie, Robbie created because those felt right on his body. And the other thing that we did was, Jackson said, because you have ticks for several weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, you name them, because you're going to be intimately, involved with them. So in the movie, Robbie has ones, the Vogue, which is where he does that. The Otter was that one. The Pig, which was a vocal one, was ee. So, and before each scene, I'd be like, okay, so give me the pig, give me the otter. And he was just so great about making it, once again, just so it was authentic and real. Because also, I don't know if many people know, he's Irish and he has a very thick accent. So the fact that he was doing an American accent, ticking, and he had to be able to duplicate it from take to take. He was just extraordinary. And then with Dev, he and I, once again, he started rehearsing the moment that he got cast. That was 3 months, and meeting with lots of people with OCD. And Zoe probably had the hardest physical transformation, because once I cast her, she wanted to lose weight, and we talked about it, because Marie is such a character that's been, her body's been ravaged by anorexia. And so we did it as safely as it can be done. We hired her a dietitian and a trainer, but losing that amount of weight is not safe. And she was just a trooper, and she was very tired all the time because she was not eating a lot during the day. She was taking nutrients and stuff, but yeah, I mean, she has talked openly about it, about how she had bulimia in high school, and doing this part did re-trigger some of her old demons.
Oh.
But I was there watching her, because like I said, I knew what to expect and what to look for. I called her every week after we stopped shooting to make sure she was gaining the weight back. And she actually says now she's through it even stronger than she was before because she realized she is more powerful than her disorder. So, yeah, I mean, I got so lucky that I got 3 lead actors that all wanted to portray these disorders with authenticity and reality and care as opposed to phoning it in.
Yeah, or somebody who's just there because it's a job.
Exactly. Well, they certainly weren't there for the money. I'll tell you that much.
I actually did want to ask about the casting, because this is a phenomenal cast. You're bringing in a lot of people, not only as our 3 main characters, but also Robbie's dad and the doctor that runs the facility. This is a great cast. How did you bring them all together?
So we cast Robbie first because I knew without a Vincent, I wouldn't have a movie. And I met with a lot of incredible actors in Hollywood. And I had a very specific vision in my head. I wanted someone tall and lanky because I wanted the tics to almost have a poetry to them and a beauty. And then I wanted, someone with a great head of hair and eyes and lips and the whole package, right? And a girl can dream. And so everyone who I was meeting was like 7 of those 8 things. And so I finally went, we were supposed to originally shoot in the fall of 2012. And I went to the producers and I said, we got to push because I haven't found my Vincent. And they luckily believed in me enough to say, okay, but it's always dangerous because they could either put their money somewhere else or change their mind or whatever. So, but they all decided. But they were getting a little frustrated. They're like, what are you looking for, right? And so I tried to go through the list and tell them all these things. And they're like, we don't understand. And so I finally said, I have to want to sit on his face. That's the requirement for Vincent because the audience has to love him instantaneously because he does go through, he's not necessarily the most likable character when you first meet him. He's shouting out offensive things and he's doing things that, against his father and stuff. So when Robbie Sheehan walked in the door, I was literally floored because he was exactly what I was looking for. And I knew his previous work, so I knew how talented he was. And then when I called the producers, I go, I found him. It was November 16th, 2012. And I called him, and so we went to drinks that night so that they could meet him. And so the meeting went great. And then he left. And they all 3 guys go, even we want to sit on his face. So they understood what I was after. And obviously, when you see the movie, I think I made the right decision. And then so next was Dev, and Dev was someone who I had in mind the entire time that I was writing the script because I love his frenetic energy. He's like this ball of energy. And I kept sending it to him and he kept saying no, because as I found out later, he wanted to make sure that he could do justice for the character. And he didn't know enough about OCD. And I guess he had had some bad experiences before where he got hired and the director was like, okay, great, go do the character and come back. And I was like, oh my God, no, I'm going to hold your hand the whole way because I need to learn about these things too. So how I ended up getting the meeting though is I know his manager. And so I literally kept calling every other day because I'm very persistent. And she finally called me. She was like, if I set a meeting for you and him, will you stop calling? And I was like, yes, okay, fine. So she set the meeting and the rest is history. And then with Zoe, I was also, especially careful with that role because I met a lot of young actresses who were a little too anxious to lose the weight. And I mean, look, you could throw a rock and hit an anorexic in this town just because one, it's so prevalent just in young girls, but also Hollywood. And so I wanted to be very careful to start with someone who is extremely strong that could endure the shoot and not fall victim to the disorder. And so when I met Zoe, she just, first of all, she was the character. She's sexy, she's unpredictable, she's dangerous. You don't know if she's going to kill you or kiss you when she walks in the room. So she was someone who just electrified the room when she walked in. And we talked about it really in depth because I wanted to make sure she had that inner strength, and she does in droves. But like I said, even then, it still took over. It didn't get anything full-fledged, but there was the question of like, do I want to gain this weight back? Because everybody kept coming up to her and saying, oh my God, you're way too skinny. You look fantastic. What are you doing? And that's what I finally told her. I said, that's other people's issues. That's not yours. Because I was like, you don't look good. You look sick. You shouldn't be this thin. And so I think between that and her mother and her, the rest of her family telling her, that's what helped her also break out of it.
No, and something that people don't understand is that it's something that never really goes away.
Right.
It always stays there with you, and that's a lot.
Because you
of
always have to eat.
Yeah, and that's part of what this movie is about.
Right.
And I really appreciate that, because that is an issue that affects a lot of people.
Right.
And nobody likes to talk about it.
Right. And exactly. I'm hoping that this movie does bring these things to light and opens the discussion, because no one should be embarrassed. The biggest turning point in my past with eating disorders was telling my family. The moment that I did that, the shame and secrecy all went away. And then I could actually start to get better. But before that, I was keeping it a secret. And so there's no way you can get better when you're holding that kind of secret. So, but just to finish, so I was just lucky to work with Kira Sedgwick and Robert Patrick. I mean, the fact that they said yes, and it was literally a dream come true, just working with the whole cast.
No, and they did a fantastic job. Was there anything in particular that you guys did? Were you worried about chemistry because each of them individually personified these characters? Were you worried that they would be able to get along, though?
No, because that's why I was so particular about the energy levels. Like I was referring to, Dev's frenetic energy. Robbie, in any given scene, was kind of in the middle because he could go either way. And then Zoe was on the far other end of the spectrum because she was so exhausted all the time from not eating. And so I looked at it almost like music, where you don't want to have too many notes playing at the same time or they cancel each other out. And so obviously there's times where they're all screaming, but that was orchestrated. And the rest of the time, I really just tried to place them emotionally and physically in the same space, but covering the whole spectrum. So that kind of coincided with the chemistry, because it enabled them to each have their own point of view. And yeah, I did get lucky that they all loved each other, and because we shot this in 23 days. So it was definitely something where we were running and gunning to a certain extent.
I do want to talk a little bit about the production process, because as we talked about before, this is a road trip movie, which I'm very, very fond of. I love when people have to get to point A to point B at the end of a movie. What is it like filming, or at least creating a film where people are on the road?
Yeah, well, we did end up going somewhere at the last few days of shooting, but we had to fake a lot of it because of budget. So we did shoot in LA for the majority of the time, and then went to Yosemite, Big Sur, Santa Cruz, and Groveland in the final couple of days, and that was incredible. I mean, you can't ask for a more gorgeous scenery. I mean, when you're at Yosemite, it doesn't even look real when you're there. And I know on film, people have said, they're like, "Oh, is that a backdrop?" I'm like, first of all, that backdrop would have cost what our entire film cost, because it's huge. And so like that was just amazing. But I will say the driving scenes were interesting, because I ended up hiring 3 actors who can't drive. I don't even know why it didn't occur to me to ask the question, like, "Oh, can you drive?" But Robbie only had a learner's permit. Zoe had never driven before in her life because she grew up in New York. And Dev, though he did have a license, was the worst driver of all of them. And was terrifying to be in the car with. So, because I'm actually in the back seat of all those driving scenes, hiding behind the front seat, or hiding behind whoever's in the back seat. And, I'm watching on my little monitor and stuff. So it's just funny that I was there, and some of the outtakes are funny because Dev was driving and he almost hit something, and we all start screaming. And he's like, I got it. I was like, "No, you don't."
I like that. That's sort of a running joke within the movie as well, is that none of them are really that great of drivers.
It's true. Yeah. So next time that's going to be question number 1. If I ever do
Can
another
you
road
drive?
movie, I know. Good Lord. But yeah, I agree with you. Like the road movies, the whole point is, and by the way, they go from Reno to California. It's not like it's a huge trip.
It's not like they're going across the country.
Right. But for them it is, because they've been told their whole lives that they're not capable of anything. So therefore you've now got 3 people who, even though they don't go a great distance, on the map, they do personally. So.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell. Won't spoil anything for everybody who hasn't seen it yet. Wait for the movie to come out. Going back a little bit further, I wanted to know personally, what made you want to get into storytelling to begin with?
So, like I was saying before, just about, I developed a point of view very early on because of the accident. And yeah, I feel a need. Like, it's hard to explain, but I love waking up in the morning and sitting in front of my computer and creating characters, creating stories. Luckily, I've made a living at it for 15 years because I don't know what I would do otherwise. But yeah, it's really this passion, this need, and I can't help it. Like, and it won't stop even when I'm driving, and that's actually my best thinking time. If I'm ever stuck on something, I get in my car, which probably isn't the safest thing to do, but it helps clear the thoughts.
Now, anybody who's stuck in their car for a couple hours every day here in LA can probably relate
That is
and
true.
understand. Did you ever have a moment where it was like an epiphany or a eureka, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
I mean, I was directing plays in my basement at 10, so it wasn't ever necessarily a moment like that. I just always knew that I wanted to tell stories. And it's funny looking back at those now because, obviously I was trying to corral my sisters and brother and cousins and all that. And
Amateurs.
I know. But I remember we did The Wizard of Oz one time, and I had to play Dorothy because nobody else wanted to, and they were all playing outside or whatever. And I remember my dad was doing the camera work, and I froze so that I could edit the scene together. No, I didn't have editing software. I didn't even know what editing was. But I just remembered, I was like, I have to freeze so that when I pick up the next scene, I can go back to that. And it was like, what are you talking about? My dad was like, I'm pressing record on a camcorder. So anyway.
Yeah, I imagine cameras at the time didn't have internal editing.
No, I mean, it was borderline like, drawing type of thing. So
Yeah, it's evident just from watching the film that this was a passion project, and that obviously but you talked about how you guys had a very strict deadline, that you only had 23 days to film it. Was that the biggest challenge, or was it the research in trying to do these issues justice? What do you think was the biggest challenge?
I think working within the budget, only because money provides time, which provides options. So we didn't have a lot of options to do. Excuse me.
No worries. Yeah, no, it's always difficult trying to reconcile budget versus creative choice and creativity. And that I find is always one of the hardest things to reconcile. But with your team of producers, did you find that, at least within the confines of what you guys had to work with, that you had the best creative options?
Yeah, they were behind me 100%. And I did say to the actors early on, we can only afford to do 3 takes per setup. So they knew ahead of time that they had to nail it on take 1. And then, we averaged probably 2 to 2.5 takes per setup, just because they were so well prepared that they came in, they did their job. And when they did nail it on take 1, and I knew I had something that I could edit together, I gave them free rein, and I said, do whatever you want. Like, because I just needed to know that there was something. And so Robbie probably took advantage of it the most, where he came up with some tics that, some of them which are in the movie. Anal bleach is all Robbie. And then there's another one that unfortunately got cut out, but it was carved vagina. And, because at that point he knew the character better than I did. So, of course, I gave him free rein. And it's interesting because he's actually said in a couple of interviews that was probably the best thing that I could have given him. And also, as a first-time director, something that he wasn't used to, because most first-time directors that he's worked with hold on to it and try and control it. And I was like, but why? I mean, you're the professional actor, and you're the one bringing this character to life. And it was also that I trusted him, because he was so well prepared, and the first few days shooting, I just saw the magic that he was creating, and so I'm like, go. So
did you give them free rein to improvise then, apart from Robbie's character?
Excuse me.
No worries.
Can we stop for a second? Or?
No, it's okay. But yes, you can definitely tell because his performance throughout the entire film is just phenomenal.
Right. It wasn't like I said don't improvise, but because we had rehearsed for so long that it was one of those things where we had worked out any kinks in the script or any lines that didn't sound right coming out of their mouths. So once we were on set, because the thing about improvising also is it can take a long time to get to something. So I do feel like that rehearsal process definitely helped. And they were all very, like, Zoe was so cute where she was like, can I say this? And I was like, of course. Like, you know, once again, they knew the characters.
Yeah, and the entire movie feels very natural, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of it had been improvised, because they give such good performances. But you're absolutely right, because there were a lot of things that had to be done to a T, just kind of looking at it that way. Going off of that, and obviously you had some big time constraints, but I wanted to ask about the atmosphere on set, because you're dealing with such serious subject matter, but it's a lighthearted film. Was it kind of a lighthearted atmosphere, or because everybody was so serious and there was such strict deadlines, everybody was just kind of in it to get it done?
No, I'd made sure the first day on set, I actually gave a speech before our first shot and said, you know, okay, yes, I'm the director or whatever, but if anybody has a problem or an issue or a question, you are allowed to come talk to me. I'm actually asking that you do. My only requirement is that you curse. You come up and you go, fuck you. I have a question. Because I knew that when you are dealing with difficult subject matter, you have to have lightness when you're on set, when you yell cut. Otherwise, then there's the tension and it breathes into what you're shooting. So yeah, we had an incredible time making this movie. Our gag reel is 12 minutes long. They're usually 3. So yeah, we had a good time.
I need to get my hands on that. That
Yes.
sounds hilarious. Well, we are running a little bit short on time, but I wanted to ask a few more questions. Apart from just kind of greater awareness about these issues, what is the main thing you want people to take away from this film? I mean, it really is, besides just going to the movies and having a feel-good experience, because I like movies where you laugh and cry. Old Jim Brooks movies, Mike Nichols, John Hughes, those are the movies that I go to time and time again. And I just love watching and rewatching. So this is kind of my homage to those. And so, I don't know, I mean, like, I'm a big fan of popcorn movies. It's great because you get to eat a bucket of popcorn. But sometimes I want more. I want something that also touches my soul. And so I would say, yeah, if you're looking for that, if you want the full package, go see this movie. But in the same breath, I do want to raise that awareness and just in terms of the compassion and understanding. So we were rated R because of the language. It was almost NC-17, but I've actually kind of gone up against the MPA because I don't understand, because of some 4-letter words, and just to be completely above board, is that, you know, there is that love scene where you see Zoe's boobs, but what teenager hasn't seen boobs? And it just doesn't make any sense to me, because we've played in other places across the world, Rome, Sweden, Ireland, and there's no issue with language. 14-year-olds are watching our movie and they're loving it because it's opening up the discussion, and they're asking really beautiful, eloquent questions afterwards about the disorders and what to do if you meet someone with Tourette's. How do you talk to them about it? All of these things, that it opens it up. And so for whatever reason in the US, you're not allowed under 17 to see a movie where there's curse words, but yet you're allowed to see someone's head blown off in a PG-13 movie. Like that, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I think I like bringing that up in terms of an argument or just a discussion rather with parents, which is to say, why are you letting someone else
govern your child and what they can see. I think that, there's some very mature 13-year-olds and some very immature 17-year-olds. So the parents should be the one to decide. I've actually written an op-ed that will hopefully be on Huffington Post in the next day that challenges just that. And I say, I will pay for the first 100 people, the first 100 parents to go see the movie first. And if they think their child is mature enough, then bring them back and watch it with them and talk to them about it afterwards. Because there's nothing in this movie that is going to cause someone to become a cursing lunatic if they, they didn't already have that problem. So I just think it's once again, an interesting topic to discuss.
No, and I know in high school I watched way worse. So yeah, no, it is one of those things where it's like, this doesn't really make sense.
Right. So it seems to be an out of touch governing board, and it's fine. Look, people listen to it, people don't. I don't tend to, but then again, I don't have kids. So,
well, I agree with the notion that people should. Every kid is different, and every kid matures at a different rate. So I think people should take that into account when looking at their entertainment. So I agree 100%. Do you have any other upcoming projects that you'd like to talk about now that this film is done?
Yes, so I just signed on to my next feature to direct, and it's a beautiful story about a female Marine who gets both legs shot off in Iraq and ends up having to go back to the place that she was running from to begin with, which is her hometown and her family. So it's just, an exquisitely gorgeous story about not only the way that our injured veterans are being received back at home, but also one girl's journey to mending things with her family. So yeah, I'm very excited about that one.
Are you working with any of the veteran organizations to kind of bring this film to light?
Yeah, so my friend who's producing it, Archie Drury, is a former Marine, and so he has all those connections, and we're hopefully going to cast all of the people in the hospital with Marines, just because, once again, it's a beautiful subject to bring to light.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to see that one as well, because this one was fantastic. How can people go out and watch this film?
I'm glad you asked. So it's opening this weekend, April 17th in New York and LA. In New York at AMC Empire, 42nd Street, and then in LA at Laemmle NoHo and Laemmle Music Hall. And just the thing about indie movies is we need butts and seats. You can't say, oh, there's no good movies playing, and then don't go support them. So this is one where I actually do think, once again, it's up to parents, but bring your kids and talk to them about it. And then let's start this conversation. But it's also, Robbie is really cute, as we discussed before. And so, and Zoe and Dev, it's like I got very lucky. I kind of struck lightning in terms of the casting, because they're all having these moments in their careers. And so, and obviously, like I said, Kira and Robert Patrick. But it's a really fun movie. And then we're expanding to 8 cities the following weekend. And you can check our website for that, which is www.theroadwithin-movie.com to check out what cities we're in. And then it depends, because if we do really well, we'll expand even more. And so, if people want the movie to come to their hometown, call whoever you know in New York and LA and tell them to go to the theater.
Well, that'd be fantastic. So folks, go out there, support the movie, because it's fantastic. I kid you not, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where can people go if they want to find out more about you and about the work that you're doing online?
So my Twitter handle is @Grendola. I do curse a lot. I'm just letting you guys know ahead of time. So most of my posts are offensive, and to some people, I think they're funny. But and then on Facebook, Facebook Gren Wells. Yeah, that's how you can find me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and talk to us today about this phenomenal movie.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
We really appreciate it. And again, folks out there, if you haven't already done so, remember, go to iTunes, rate, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at The Popcorn Talk. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and I've been your host. You can follow me on Twitter at The Menguin, that's TheMenguin. I also do a bunch of shows at our sister network, AfterBuzz, and I've started writing articles for the Movie Chick, so be sure to check those out as well. Thank you so much again for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And we will see you guys next time at iTalk Movies.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.